Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Freedom Nation podcast with Jeff Kikel. I'm glad to have you on the show today. I've got David Webb on, who is a real estate guy. He's also a no money real estate guy. So, for those of you that are sitting there in your little cubicle all alone, or that business owner who's finishing up their day right now and is completely burned out, and you don't think you can invest in real estate, David's going to tell you different on that. So stay tuned. We'll be right back on in just a second.
All in you. Everything you're looking for, it's all in you. You gotta believe that it's all in you. Everything you're searching for, it's all in.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. David, welcome, sir.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you on today. Really excited to have this conversation. I know, growing up when I first got into real estate years ago, it was the Carlton Sheets world and Dave Delgado and all those guys that were talking about no money down, and then it kind of died off for a while. And hopefully, it's coming back a little bit as long as you do it responsibly. So, why don't you tell us your story? How did you get to where you're at today?
I got where I'm at today through a lot of evictions and a lot, which is true. I was evicted over 15 times. A lot of struggle, a lot of learning what not to do.
Yeah.
And, I think it's quoted to credited Edison said, I've never failed. I just learned 10,000 ways that didn't work.
That's exactly right.
That's what I'm doing now, helping people avoid any of those 10,000. So, so I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. I've been out to California. I'm now in Oklahoma, and I go by the No Money Millionaire because I teach people how to buy real estate without having to use any of their own capital.
Yeah. Cool. So you went through the eviction stuff, you went out, you've traveled around. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved in real estate and how you had some success with it.
I'm from the inner city of Detroit. I went to Detroit public school system, and so I grew up with a single mother on welfare, and I wasn't taught anything about real estate. Matter of fact, I don't even think I knew anyone who owned a home. And so, in Michigan or in Detroit or in that income class, you're not taught about passive income.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, instead of being taught how to have your money work hard for you, you're taught the opposite. We are ingrained with you have to work hard for your money. And so, my first two real estate deals were both no money deals, but I didn't grasp it. I still didn't know what I had done to be able to then continue doing it. So I was still stuck under the belief that I had to have a certain amount of a down payment. I had to have my credit right. I had to have, all my taxes in order before I could buy real estate. And so I went another, 10 years or more after already doing 2 no money deals, but couldn't break my mindset. I couldn't break the beliefs that I had been strapped down with, that I need these certain pieces, even after doing 2 of them. And so it took me another 10 years before it all came together. But in that time, I had just invested in stuff, didn't know what I was doing, making mistakes, losing money, until, I finally learned how this is done using other people's money.
So what was that transition that, when did the light bulb come on for you?
I had purchased a property. I went in, I had partnered with somebody, brought them in for their capital, and I had an apartment building. And this was only about 5-6 years ago. And there was another building that came available, and it was right down the street. And so, I self-managed all my units, and I saw that, and I was full. So the one apartment building that I had gotten with the partner was full, and I was turning people away. And so I saw this other apartment building come available within blocks away, and I wanted it badly, but I didn't have any capital.
Yep.
And so that's when the wheels started turning, because, one thing that I have been that's aided me throughout this course of mine was determination.
Mm,
And I was determined. I wanted that property, and I just had to figure out how to get it.
sure.
And that's when I started reaching outside of my normal box and started approaching people and talking to them. And that's when I put my first structure of utilizing OPM, and I purchased that apartment building with absolutely not a dollar of my money.
That's awesome. Was it an apartment complex that was in decent condition, or did you have to do some rehab to kind of get it to where you can increase the rents and everything?
That's all I look for is value
Okay.
add properties. Because I do my own renovations as well, and I
Mhm.
know that that's where you can really increase the value of what you have. And so
Sure.
everything I look for is really value add potential.
Mhm. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, that for a lot of people in the audience, that sounds immediately scary. Of, well, how do I find people? Where am I going to find people that have money for this? I don't know anybody that has money, like this kind of money, to buy an apartment complex or something. What got you out of your bubble and started to get you there? Because you didn't come from that world of where you knew tons of people that had money.
No, and I still wasn't in that world.
Yeah.
Again, my determination, and really I wanted that building so badly. I sat one day, and my wife will say that I didn't sleep for a few days,
Mhm.
because I was just trying to figure it out. I wanted it so badly, and I was just trying to figure it out. And I watched courses, of other people that I admire, and I heard them talking about what they're doing, and I just didn't know. And finally, I knew the banker,
Mm.
and I asked him, "What's it going to take for me to get this property?"
Yeah.
And he told me what I needed. And so then that set me on the path to get the other pieces that I needed to get the bank to work with me on it. And
Mm.
now I help people that aren't able to go to the banks, and I
Yeah.
still, help people do that. But the position I was in by this point in my life, I was able
Mhm.
to. And
Yeah.
so I said, what's it going to take for me to get this? And he said, all right, well, you need this and this and this. And so I didn't know people with money.
Mhm.
And I th- I thought I didn't know people with money. They
Mhm.
weren't in my immediate circle. They weren't my
Sure.
family. It wasn't anything like that. The one person that I reached out to, so I sat and I figured after I knew what I needed, I said, okay. And so I found three people that I thought I could ask. One was the person who had previously owned my home that I
Mhm.
had, the home I was living in. He was a previous homeowner that I spoke to just a couple times
Yeah.
about the house or whatnot. I didn't really know him on a friend basis.
Mhm.
And another person owned a convenience store in an
Okay.
area that I used to stop in, and I chatted it up with the guy, and
Mhm.
that was it. And then one other was a person that was a contractor that I had
Okay.
met since I moved to town, and we hadn't done work together, but we were cordial. We knew each other,
Mhm.
and I sat and sent a text out to those three people.
Mhm.
And I sent a text and said, I'm looking at getting this property. Would you be interested in hearing more about investing in it with me? And
Yeah.
I sat there as nervous as I could be. I didnn't know what was coming. I really didn't. I'm like, oh. And then the text came in,
Yeah.
and all three of them said they were interested, but I ended up working with one of them.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's the perfect story of, yeah, you didn't go to like a real estate meetup and talk to all these
No,
people that were
no.
in real estate. These are just average people who had saved some money up and were looking for a diversification and all that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so how did you get started? Was it in homes, and then kind of expanded to apartment complexes and other properties like that, or
While I was actively trying to get into real estate and not knowing what I was doing,
Mhm.
most of it was all single family homes.
Got it.
And once I finally got to the point where I got my partner and we were able to get the one apartment building, that one was one building of 20 units.
Okay.
And that's when I started feeling and started getting in my zone.
Okay.
And from there, I stuck with those. The next building was another 8-unit just right down the street.
Mm.
But during some of my growth period, and I call it my expensive tuition, it was a lot of single family homes.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Well, and I think you find in the end that 20 units is a hell of a lot easier than managing a single unit for sure.
Yeah, they all have their challenges,
Yeah,
but it's nice to have 20 under one roof. It really is.
exactly. Yeah, well, and
Yeah.
efficiency, and you can hire
Yeah.
a management team and everything else. So for somebody that's starting out today, they're not where you are today.
Sure.
What would you recommend? And what advice do you give through your courses and books and things like that? How does somebody get started?
Well, it depends really on their situation, but
Okay.
let's just talk generally here. And it's funny you had mentioned, like, when I did that 8-unit, I hadn't been part of Facebook. I hadn't been part of any groups. I hadn't been part of anything. Um, but my first advice to somebody would be to get part of those groups.
Okay.
Right now, if you're interested in getting into real estate, start looking at your local, their REIA, that's Real Estate Investors Associations. You can find them
Mhm.
on Facebook, but get active. Start
Yeah.
introducing yourself. Start meeting people, because opportunities are going to, present themselves to you. Lenders are going to be there. You can get to meet. And so the pieces that you're really looking for are going to start appearing in those
Mm.
groups.
Love it.
Yeah,
And I think you gave a really good example of how to approach somebody about that. Just have conversations with people and then throw it out there, at the time. Did those people, when you sent it out, I mean, was it what came out of those conversations that kind of triggered you to say, hey, maybe this person might be interested? Or
no, I just knew they seemed successful in their lives.
okay.
And so, I didn't feel I was asking for a lot,
Mhm.
from them. I thought, the level they are in their life, maybe, I was looking for $100,000 for
Okay.
my first investor.
Okay.
And so all three of them came back. And, I was just coaching somebody yesterday about doing this exact thing. And I
Mhm.
told them, when you send out that text, because I told them, people, you
Mhm.
interact with them. I was getting my eyeglasses made one day, and I was talking to the optometrist, telling her about what I'm doing, and she said, "Oh, my husband and I, we tried to invest with some people, it didn't work out." So it's really anybody you're interacting with.
Yeah.
But what I coached him to do was, when you send out that text, or when you do initiate that conversation, use the words, "Would you be interested in learning more about investing
Mhm.
in this project with me?"
Sure.
Because that right there signifies that you're asking for money.
Yeah.
You can say, "Do you want to partner with me? Would you be interested in going?" That doesn't say it as clearly as, "Would you be interested in learning more about investing in this with me?"
Mhm. Yeah. And I think it's a little tweak to the language, but I think it's an incredibly important tweak, because if they're
Sure.
not, if they don't feel comfortable doing it,
Sure.
or if they don't even have the money to do it, you give them an
Exactly.
out at that point. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. It's not,
Yeah.
I always think of those, the people that do multi-level marketing, the way they used to teach it, hey,
Sure.
why don't you come to this event and we'll talk about stuff? Okay, well, it's just, you're going to hit me up with another MLM deal or whatever.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
lay it out. Tell me what it is,
Yeah.
and if I'm
Yeah.
interested, I'm interested. Otherwise, you waste your time with a lot of people you don't need to.
Exactly.
So, how do you recommend? So you're working with people, right? Get out there, get involved in the real estate groups. How do you recommend somebody find their first deal, and then how do they structure that? And once again, this is hypothetical, but
Of course. And again, it depends on people's individual situations. So if you're somebody who's like was in the position that I was in,
mm,
I faced evictions. I had a period where my utilities got shut off and I
yeah,
couldn't get caught up, so they wouldn't turn them on. And so I lived in a house without utilities for a while until I could move to get them on,
mm,
living paycheck to paycheck. Or there's somebody that I'm working with, they're doing okay. and they've
Mhm.
put a little money together. And, so it depends on your situation, but um, depending on that, someone I'm working with right now, he was in a situation that I used to be in. Never thought he would be a property owner. I just
Mhm.
helped him find seller finance.
Yeah.
And he found a triplex, which one unit was empty, which he ended up moving into. The 2 units downstairs were enough to pay the note from the
Mhm.
seller. So he got into that. The 2 units are paying it. He's living there for free. So that worked
Nice.
for his situation,
Yeah.
you know? So, and then the person I was coaching yesterday, he actually has some money to put in. So I have him looking, and he's joined the local REIAs. They're important
Mhm.
because there's wholesalers on there. There's people offering off market deals. You're going to find all kinds of stuff once you start getting active. And so
Mhm.
he's connected with a group that's giving him off market opportunities. So he's finding good opportunities, and we're trying to land him on one right now. So just really
Nice.
depends on the situation.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Um, and then you kind of step up from maybe the individual properties to like a quadplex or something like
Sure.
that, or into an apartment complex. What does that transition look like? Because it is different from just managing like single family homes.
Well, it's nicer to some once you start looking at the 8 units,
Mm.
4 unit plus. I think it starts at 5 units plus,
Yeah.
because now those properties, they won't look at you personally so much about if you can afford the payment. They're going
Mm.
to look at the property now, and
Yeah.
does the property generate enough cash flow that it'll be able to cover the payment? So they
Mm.
stop looking at you so much personally and now start looking at your project.
Nice.
So, when I went with the 20 unit, I went with an 8 unit, and they went based on the income of those properties.
Mm.
And so, that helps people, because a lot of people are like, well, I don't, how can I take on another note? And, I wouldn't qualify. But that's not really the case.
Mm.
They look at those, once you start getting into 5 units plus, they start looking at the property itself
Yeah.
about if that can cover the payments or not.
Well, and I think at that point, my guess would be that's where you start learning a little bit more about how to actually structure the deal, how to show what the cash flow is, what are you going to do to rehab it and improve the profitability and
Sure.
everything, correct?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where,
Go ahead, please.
yeah, no, where did you learn to do that? Because I mean that's a whole nother step in the process, especially if you don't come from a real estate background.
Exactly. No, and it came through trial and error with me, learning as I went. I got my first no money property in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
And so, I've been actively losing money,
Mm.
doing deals, just buying the wrong properties, not knowing what I'm doing, from the mid 90s all the way up.
Yep.
And I had one property, just because I wasn't experienced enough, didn't know what to do with it. But if I had it today, oh man, it would have been everything I knew that it was, and I
Mm.
could get it done today. But then I
Yeah.
just didn't know how. And that one, I ended up losing a lot of money on. I bought that one. I couldn't get the bank to stand behind me what I needed. I didn't know. I didn't know how to
Mm.
do it.
Yeah.
And so that one I ended up losing on. I had to sell that for a loss. But when I did that, when the realtor I asked to sell it, he said to me, he said, "Dave, the money is made when you buy, right?"
Hmm.
And I understood what he was saying. I said, I get it. I get
Yeah.
it. So, I learned along the way. And
Yeah.
what you had mentioned, that presentation, that
Mhm.
is so important. And I
Yeah.
offer that on my website. I have tools
Cool.
and different things that is offered on my website. Um, that those are important. The
Mhm.
presentation to investors, the presentation to the bank, those are
Mhm.
important. And so, I've learned to dial it in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and I mean, you're talking different language with cap rates and everything
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is a different language that you need to speak, and you've got to learn the terminology. So
Yeah, definitely.
it pays to get out there and learn a little bit. And you're kind of at least a one stop shop with a lot of experience on the getting there and figuring it out.
Sure.
Um, so someone is this something that if I have $0 at all, no credit, not very much knowledge, is this something that I can realistically get going relatively quick?
You know, you're not excluded, that's for sure.
Yeah,
You can get involved, but it's not, if it was super easy, everybody would do it.
absolutely.
Okay. Is it doable? Yes, it
Hmm.
is doable. But again, you have to be determined. There's, another key word is perseverance.
Yep.
So you have to be able to, stick through these things. But just because you don't have the down payment, just because your credit's not perfect,
Hmm.
doesn't exclude you, which I thought most of my life that it did.
Yeah.
I wasted, 20, 30 years trying to get those pieces right before I
Hmm.
thought I could become a real estate investor, but it doesn't need to be. The
Yeah.
guy that I just got to help get a triplex, his credit was horrible. His taxes weren't up to date. He didn't have a down payment. Now he's an owner of a triplex and he's already
Hmm.
looking at his second property. So it
Yeah.
is doable.
Yeah. Well, and he's also limited, or he's eliminated his rent that he would
Exactly.
normally have, and has
Exactly.
the property he's living in is taking care of that for him, and he's building
Yeah.
equity
Yeah.
every month, which is amazing.
Yeah.
What do you see is, I mean, it's kind of a weird real estate market right now. What do you kind of project as we roll into 2026 at this point?
Well, every market's different.
Yep.
And that's one thing you're going to find, these dips, these booms, these busts, a lot of them are really market specific. And so fortunately for me, where I'm at, my market, it doesn't really spike up, doesn't really
Yep.
dip down. It's just kind of an even, path, which is nice.
Hmm.
But even in those markets, even in those areas, the Californias, the Floridas, or whatever, there's still areas outside that performs differently than other areas. So I'm a firm believer, and there was a book that I read that helped change me. And it's called The Science of Getting Rich. It
Hmm.
was a free book online. It was from the early 1900s, around 1905 or something. Author's named Wallace Wattles, and The Science of Getting Rich. And it's really not so much about monetary riches, but
Hmm.
that does, end up like coming, but it's more about life enrichment.
Okay.
And it taught me in there's two mindsets. There's a competitive mindset and a creative mindset.
Hmm.
And being part of the creative mindset, you just know you're pretty much going to create what you're after. And you
Hmm.
don't really worry so much about, that there's not enough pieces in the pie or it's going to be. So I don't really have that competitive mindset anymore.
Hmm.
And so ever since I aligned myself with this other way of thinking, it's really changed my course. It's really done a lot.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Well, let's transition over to the fast five questions now.
Okay.
First question: you woke up in the morning, business is gone. You have 500 bucks in your pocket, a laptop computer, a place to live,
Okay.
food and clothing. What are you going to do first?
Well, thank God you gave me the laptop. The first thing I'm going to do, and I just did a video on this as well. If I started from zero today, you're giving
Yeah.
me 500, which is a nice help. But if I started from zero today, what would be the first things I did? And the
Mm,
very first thing I would do is get part of the real estate groups, introducing myself, let people know, this is what I want to do. And they'll help you. The
mm,
second thing I would do after that, I'd find lenders that are lending on deals that I'm looking for.
yep.
And then the third thing, and when I find those lenders, I talk to them very bluntly, saying, what do I need? How do I need to present it to you? What do you need from me so you'll
Mm,
fund the deal?
yep.
So now I'm meeting people that's going to show me deals. I'm finding the lenders that's going to lend them. And then the third thing I would do is start getting active in my local chambers, meetup groups, Rotary clubs, any of these where you're finding business people who
Mm,
want to invest in real estate. They just don't have the time to be able to be in real estate.
yeah.
And those are your three main pieces.
Love it. Love it. What's the biggest business mistake you ever made?
I mean, financially was that one I told you about
Yeah.
that I lost a lot of money on. Um, uh, I guess a good answer to that would be a partner.
Mm,
Yeah. You gotta, when you get in business with somebody and you take on partners, you got to understand that, it's like a marriage.
Yeah.
You're living with them, you're, working day to day, and disagreements in a marriage can be, disastrous, but
Mhm.
disagreements in business can really be disastrous, and
Yeah.
you can have everything riding on it. And so, be careful with your partners.
Yeah. It's the scary thing is when it's easier to get a divorce than it is to disconnect from a partner in those
Yes.
cases. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can relate to many times. I already told my attorney that no more partners ever. He has the right to punch me in the face. So
One of my very first intro to partners, there were three of us,
mhm.
and we went to the law office to get something structured, and he said, "You three are friends?" And we said, "Yeah." He
You
said,
won't
"I
be.
will be amazed if when this is over, you three are friends." And we're not
Yeah,
friends. That
yes,
drifted,
yes,
that broke up, pretty quickly. And it gets bitter. And so
yeah.
he knew it. So I would say that's something to
Been,
be careful of.
been there, done that many a time, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
what's a good book that you'd recommend for our audience?
Well, I've recommended the one, The
Yeah.
Science of Getting Rich. I
Okay.
think, matter of fact, I used to hand it out to people when people would come and
Okay.
talk to me, this and that. I said, "Here, read this." It's amazing. It really helped change my mindset into the creative mindset. And so I'm being redundant here. I'm mentioning it again, but that's the one I even would give out to someone.
That's awesome. I'll try and find a link to that and put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
What's a tool that you use in your business every day that you might recommend?
AI.
Okay.
AI.
How do you
If you're
use
not
that
using AI
in the real
today,
estate world?
I use it for all kinds of stuff. When I'm drawing up notices to give to my tenants, I go
Hmm.
through AI. AI writes them up. When I want to look over a contract real quickly, I will send it into AI and tell it to look at it from like the buyer's perspective or the seller's perspective. Tell me if it's heavy-handed. Point out some areas to really help. So I utilize AI for a lot.
Hmm. I love it. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I haven't had anybody on in the real estate world, so it was kind of to talk about AI. So it's interesting to hear your take on it. Yeah, and I use it very much the same way. I mean, a lot of times if I'm given a contract,
Mm-hmm.
I'll have it kind of okay. Give me the pluses and minuses. Where's the gotchas in there that the attorney thinks that they're gonna slide past me or whatever, and it's usually really good at catching all that stuff and bringing it up.
I use it
Let
even to, I'm sorry, but yeah, I
Yeah.
use it to even sometimes give me some ideas of when I want to structure and pitch something to an investor or whatnot. I feed it all that. And I'm like, give me some ideas of what's mutually beneficial to both sides, and
Okay.
something creative, because I do a lot of creative, structures, and AI will help give some ideas, work with.
Yeah. Yeah, it was funny the other day. I was and kind of sort of off the topic, but of course, I'm in the wealth management space, and I was looking at a an option strategy, and I was like, you know what, I could do the technical analysis myself,
Yeah.
but I went in to Grok and I kind of gave it its parameters, and it punched out the most perfect scenario for me. Is phenomenal. And of course it always starts off with, now this isn't advice or
Sure.
anything, and I'm not an
Yeah.
advisor, but it was
Yeah.
some of the best advice, and I was able to kind of tweak it a little bit. But I think from a creative standpoint, sometimes it's just nice to go. It's almost like having a sounding board in a
Yeah.
lot of cases that you can
Yeah.
work off
Yeah.
of.
Definitely.
Last question: what is your definition of freedom?
The more I talk about this, it seems like it's cliche, but it's your time. It really
Mm,
is. It really is. One of the things that I was faced when I was working, and I was a single parent. I have a
okay.
son, and we were out in California. We didn't have any family,
Hmm.
and he had really rehearsed and practiced so much. He was part of this school activity, and he wanted me to be there.
Hmm.
And he really, it really meant a lot for me to be there. And he asked me, are you going to make it? And I said, I'm trying, I'm
Yeah.
trying. And I went to my boss. I tried to get the time off, and the boss, I faced either lose my job and go, or
Yeah.
keep my job and miss it. And I had to keep my job. I was a
Mhm.
single
Yeah.
parent. I couldn't. And so I couldn't be there for him.
Mhm.
And now, he's grown now, he's older, so I'm not faced with this any longer. But now with what I'm doing, nobody's going to tell me that I
Yep.
can't be part of my son's events or be with my family. Or what if it's somebody that's sick or ill and you're faced with either going to be with them or losing your job? So,
Yeah.
that's what freedom is. Freedom is your time and
Mhm.
being able to, be where you want, when you want.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And that it's the one that I tell people, financial freedom is one thing. When you say freedom, that's what everybody goes to, oh, I want financial freedom and be able to do this and that. But
Sure.
I agree with you. I mean, the very first freedom that I experienced was, unbolting myself from a job working for somebody else
Yeah.
and being able to work for myself. Yes. Did I have the financial freedom? That took another 8 years to get to that point, but I
Right.
still had my freedom to go and do what I wanted to when I needed to at that
Exactly. Yeah,
point. Awesome.
exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
David, if somebody's interested in learning a little bit more about you, they're interested in engaging you to help them, kind of get through the process, where's the best place to go?
Well, you can Google No Money Millionaire. You're going to find me. But right now, for any of your listeners, if you go to nomoneymillionaire.com, you'll
Okay.
be able to download my book for free as a digital download. And so for a limited time, we're
Mhm.
offering this. And, everything I do, everything I use, a lot of my actual examples of properties I purchased is all in there.
Okay.
And so right now, while it's available for free, I
Yeah,
wouldn't pass it up because it's a lot of great information. And so nomoneymillionaire.com and
perfect.
Google No Money Millionaire, you'll find me.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure we put that in the show notes so that
Thank you.
people can go there, just click directly on it and it'll take you there. You had nothing to lose. Download the book, learn whatever
Exactly.
you can, and I'm sure there's contact information if there's more that people want to learn from there.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, David, thank you for being on the show today. I appreciate it. Folks, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, and if you can, give us an upvote when you have a chance or a 5-star rating, because that's how it gets us in front of more and more people, and we can help. So I hope you enjoyed this. We bring these to you for that very purpose, to help you get out of where you're at right now and get you into Freedom Day. So thanks a lot, and we will see you guys back here the very next time.